Thank you so much, Dr. Amanda, for being here. I am excited, really excited to be speaking with you. You want to start by taking like 30 seconds to explain to us exactly what you do today.
I love to help people really transform from the inside out because life continuously brings us new things to experience. And so I help entrepreneurs reprogram their energy, their mindset, and their habits to get different results. So I really think of myself as like a manifestation ninja, where I get in there and I help you understand what's keeping you stuck. And almost always it starts with some sort of belief or a feeling that you got programmed with at a really young age that you've been playing out over and over again. And so I like to help people detect what that is and access their inner power so they can create whatever they choose to create instead of, keep getting this outcome that they don't understand why they're getting.
Yeah, it's like taking the control back of your
Yeah.
life and like, right, like you get
Yes.
to create what you want to create. I love that so much. And I really like appreciate the inside out approach, right? There's like so much of like quick fixes and like can like Reva each, right? And like
Mhm.
really solving the actual issue as to why that's there. That's awesome. So, but let's go back a little bit back. Um, where have you started?
Wow. In entrepreneurial world, I
Yeah.
would say it started from major personal fallout. So leaving my 15-year marriage, having an affair, next relationship not working, on the floor crying, already on food stamps and looking for a house. And I couldn't find anything for me and my three kids. And so it was like this really important moment where I realized, oh, I'm the center of all these problems. No one else is to blame. I was looking around for people to blame, and I realized I'm the person that needs to change. And so that was really where my entrepreneurial journey started. And it led me to podcasts because I could listen to podcasts for free on the go. And everything started to change in the way that I was thinking. And I was like, whoa, these people who are creating podcasts know something that I don't. And I want to learn that. And so I just started digging into everything I could, but mostly mindset, but it was like confidence and understanding fear and low self-esteem. And I had codependency issues and just all kinds of stuff that really was keeping me getting the same results over and over and feeling really stuck. And so that's where it all started for me.
What were some of the specific podcasts you remember that you really liked and those had like a big impact on you?
Will you repeat that? You timed out and I couldn't hear the critical words you said. You said what was, and then you
The
timed out.
podcasts, the specific
Oh,
podcasts. Yeah.
yeah. I started because of my relationship fallout. I started with relationship podcasts, and this was 5 years ago. So I don't know all the podcasts that are going on now, but it was like codependency and relationships. And then that led me to confidence podcasts. And then that led me to mindset and then manifestation. And it was just like this cool series of events that kept leading me in the right direction. One of my favorite quotes is by Rumi. He says, "As you take a step on the way appears." And so it was like that for me. It was like, I just, I sat up off the floor crying and went, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And that led me to podcasting. And then I would just start searching like relationship podcast. And then that would lead me to another teacher. And then I would just keep going on that path. And so it's so fun when you let yourself do that and you just let yourself be led by your inspiration and whatever it is you need to learn next. And so, now that's how I still listen to podcasts.
Yeah, podcast is like one of my personal favorites, right? Like you could listen to it while you're doing other things. And for the most part, they're really a lot more full of like actual tangible value versus some of like what other social media is, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
right. I like to think of it more as like books where it's like more you're getting more for it versus just not that you can't learn from social media, but it's not the same much as like when you're listening to an actual podcast. And now you host your own podcast. What's that about?
Yeah, Inner Power Entrepreneur. I give tips and strategies to help entrepreneurs align their energy, mindset, and habits to get what they want in life and business. So, tons of cool teaching. We're almost to episode 300, which by the time you broadcast this will probably be there. And it's been such a wild journey because I've had 4 different rebrands of it, but kept my avatar mostly the same in big ways and just gone with the flow of what am I learning about, even SEO, or what am I learning about who I'm attracting my way and how do I get better and better as I go. Like when we start in business, we really don't know what we're doing at all. And so I love that I've allowed myself to pivot as needed instead of staying stuck on a track because I was afraid what other people would think. And
Yeah.
so I play a lot in my business, and I rebrand and I rename, and I go like, or I even just go, oh, that worked and that didn't. And now I need to pivot, or I choose to pivot based on the feedback that I'm getting from what I'm putting out there.
Yeah, my own podcast has also been like rebranded like so many times and like been more extreme. It started off as a marriage podcast and now it's like right? It's completely different. So I get you on that, but it's
Yeah.
fun and it's part of like the evolution and the journey. And podcasting is always fun. But I want to go a little bit back. Back to where we were talking about when you were listening to podcasts, you said like you were starting to take action, right? Obviously you had to like work on yourself and there was all that action you're doing, but what was the first actions that you needed to do to really build, like start getting into business?
Yeah, I'd say for people, I always tell them the first action is to decide. So first you got to make a decision, and it's really, really important to declare and decide and then take action on whatever it is you declared and decided right away, because that is an inspired journey where when you have an epiphany or a moment like I did when I was on the floor crying and I thought I'm willing to do whatever it takes, do whatever comes into your mind next. Right. Because that's you being guided by your intuition. And that moment is a beautiful moment, because when you have a massive downfall, it is your time and opportunity for a breakthrough. And you're in pain for a reason. And that pain is guiding you in a direction because it's helping you see that you're out of alignment. So that first action is really a decision, and then follow what's brought to you. It's really interesting to teach people about intuition, because it's really what I'm talking about. It's where you slow down enough and get self-reflective enough to recognize that something needs to change. And I think just like you were talking about with like, microwave mentality, and we want quick fixes, we don't tend to want to slow down to see what's next, or if we're even able to change something, or what could be changed. And so, if you're deciding to become an entrepreneur and or you want to take it to the next level, you got to slow down enough to recognize what's working and what's not working. And most people are pretty addicted to being on, I think of it as the hamster wheel. Like it's more comfortable to be on the hamster wheel and just keep going and going and going and going and adding to the plate, instead of taking away and slowing down to assess and recognize and go like, hey, do I want to keep doing what I'm doing, or would I choose to do something else, and then let teachers and programs and systems appear for me.
Yeah, the method that I use, the Feuerstein method, on every single cover, like we work through very specific brain exercise workbooks, depending on what your brain needs. But on every single cover, there's big, huge, bold letters of just a moment, let me think, because we really need to just like take that moment and let me think to be able to figure out what we need to do in life. I'm curious, but you mentioned before of to do whatever action comes to mind. Um, First of all, how do you see that in like difference to like being impulsive? That's first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
second of all, what was some actions that you have taken that didn't work out in the way that you wanted them to?
Yeah, those are great questions. I love that concept too. Let me think. It's slowing down. And it's a great question about impulsivity, because sometimes people do take low strategic action that leads to the same results over and over. So it's not just about taking the same action over and over again. If you tend to be an already impulsive person, your next best action would be to slow down, right?
Right.
Which
Yeah.
is really interesting. So for me, I'm not really that impulsive of a person. I'm generally pretty like, well, is that true? That's interesting. It's like I can be impulsive, and it's guided by my inspiration now because I've trained myself in that direction. So I'd say for someone who's deciding they want to change, they go, I'm ready for a change, and just ask yourself very clearly, what's the next best step I can take? One small step, that's it. And for a business builder, there are a million steps to take from point A to Z, but you don't need to get overwhelmed with point A to Z. You just need to know A to B. So it's what's the one next best step I can take. So when I'm crying on the floor and I have that epiphany, I go, what's one thing I can do right now to start to learn how to have better relationships? Podcasts, right? I'll start listening to podcasts. So for someone out there listening, they might be going like, oh my God, I'm tired of this reality I'm getting. Let's say it's in business. I'm not making the money or attracting the clients I would choose to track. What's one next best step I can take that will lead to different results? It's just a simple question. And then just take that one step and then let the next step appear to you the next day when you ask the same question again. So that would be how I would track that. So it's not impulsive. It's definitely not about taking reactive, emotional, volatile action. Like that's not going to get you anywhere that's helpful.
Yeah.
And
Before you
so,
answer the second question, like I
yeah.
love what you said. First of all, the fact that you said you trained your brain, right? Like you trained yourself. You didn't use the word brain, but me and my brain thing, I'm sticking that in there. Is just so like everyone listening, this is a skill that you can learn. Like if you think you're impulsive, you can go the other way. And if you think that like you overthink everything and you never take action, either way, you can always train yourself. There's skills literally. That's first of all. But second of all, what you're saying about what's the next best step, some people, right, have like that impulsivityness, but some people also have like the overwhelmness of like there's way too much going on. And that actually comes from a different one of the thinking skills called blurred perception. It's like when we're taking in too much information. And just like you said, right, what is the next best step? That is literally the question that you want to ask yourself to not only get you moving forward, but to improve that thinking skill at the same time. So I love this. Okay, now back to that question about like, what did you do that like failed really badly?
Many things. You know, it's amazing because I take a lot of action and I love to create. And so I can, one of the things that can get me into, you know, quote unquote trouble or waste energy, waste time, waste money is when I'm like, I have a great idea and I don't test it and find out from my people if it's something that they think is a great idea. And so, and then also comparing myself negatively to other people who are way ahead of the game than me and thinking their system will work for me at my level. And I've done a lot of that. And so I teach people a lot like, hey, it's systems based and it's systems based on where you're at. Because, you know, I think you're right. We look at, let's say, influencers online and we think, oh my God, they're doing this and they're doing that to get this result. But it's like, oh, they have a 50,000 person following and probably a huge list. You're not going to have the same outcome when you put, for example, for me, an online course out there. When I very first started my business, I had heard like, you got to do online courses. So I created like a lot of content for this online course. I took a ton of time, ton of money, ton of energy, and one person bought it. And so and then I had to go back to that person and say, I'm not going to create this course because right now I don't have the marketing skill set or the influence yet to have more people buy it. I didn't know how to do ads. I didn't know how to do any of the stuff that would actually fill up a course to get it to the level I wanted it to get it to. Although the content was awesome, still teach it to this day. I wasn't ready at the time that I launched it. And so, you know, it was that I would say some of it was just inexperience and listening to people at different stages in the game and not knowing to sit back and question, is this the next best move for me at my stage in the game? And so
Yeah, I
that
most
was a big
definitely
one.
made that mistake a few times. And in the recent years, one of the things that really, really helped me was learning from people who are one step ahead. Because not only do sometimes people have like massive lists or massive like influence and stuff, many times they built it, especially if it's like social media or things that like are constantly changing, something that worked really well 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? And now they're teaching people how to do it the way they did it.
Mm-hmm.
But things have changed, things have shifted, and it doesn't work the same way. If you can, someone who's done it just 6 months or a year ago, it's still much newer and closer to that time frame, and very often it helps a lot more. Yeah, that's awesome. What now, like, just because like we don't want to stay in the negative part, but like what has been a success that you've had recently that like you're super proud of, and like 5 years ago you couldn't have believed that like you're actually in this place?
You know, I think probably my podcast is my baby the most. We made it to top 2% global rating. And like that to me is a testament of consistency and showing up consistently and and just something I love so much doing that's very inspired and playing with it and transforming it and sticking with it. You know, it's like I love this concept of James Clear atomic habits. If you think of 1% daily improvements and over the course of the year, 37x up level, right? And you just go like, wow, that's cool. And my podcast to me is a testament of that. No matter what, through thick and thin, I have stuck with putting weekly content out there. I had a 8-month break in releases, and it was because I thought I wanted to be a YouTuber for a while. And so I was like, well, when you talk to people on a podcast versus YouTube video, it's different strategy. And so I started playing with like, oh, I'm going to do the YouTube strategy. And then I missed my podcast. I didn't turn it off. The episodes were still there, but I said, oh, I'm saying goodbye to podcasting. And then I left for 8 months and was playing with YouTube. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I missed my podcast. And
Right.
I started having my community email me, be like, what happened? We're not on YouTube. And I was like, oh. So I went back to my podcast. I still release things on YouTube, but it's not my focus. And
Yeah.
so it's been amazing to get to be, I'd say, use the word specifically, entangled with something for so long that has realistically brought me 100% of my business. Like, people find me through my podcast. I get joint ventures through my podcast. People fall in love with you through your podcast because they get to binge listen. And so it's like, to me, a podcast has just been the bread and butter, the heart and soul of my whole business, really.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from people who have like really good podcasts. For me personally, it's not as much of like finding, but obviously that helps also, but a lot more is like the education piece, because you could so much like talk to people, and people like literally you become part of the routine and part of their lives. Like it really helps people and like makes people want to work with you. So if we do want to work with you, where can we find you, connect with you, and learn more about you?
Yeah, everything. Obviously, check out my podcast, Inner Power Entrepreneur Podcast. So it's a great way to hang out with me a lot. And just like you're saying, yeah, I teaching is one of my highest values. So it's like teaching, exploring, reflecting together, growing together. Like, I love that. So Inner Power Entrepreneur Podcast, and then everything Inner Power Daily. So this concept of I choose Inner Power Daily, it's a daily practice. It's a daily habit. It's a daily energy shift. It's you choosing every single day to access your inner power to get what you want. I always tell people your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. If you don't like what you're getting on the outside, change what's within. That's your inner power. When you feel powerless and you feel stuck, you cannot, it's an impossibility to create an outer world of success. And so you've got to first work on what's within. So Inner Power Daily, if they go there, they'll find everything about me. I have a great free course, Inner Power 101, and just all kinds of really cool tools for people.
That's awesome. All of that will be right here, linked below. So all you have to do is just click on the link. But final question. What is something controversial that you believe in?
I would say manifestation. I think it's like in my circle, a lot of people are like, sure. But when you really, whenever I speak it to a large audience, I'll ask, like, raise your hand if you have some skepticism around manifestation. And a lot of people raise their hand. And it's really because they don't understand what we're talking about is the physics of energy and how we are in an energetic state and attracting through our energy, and how other people are in an energetic state and we're playing in an energetic field. And so how do you optimize that field to get what you want? I think some people think it's a little woo woo. And then when they really get into it with me, it's like, oh, it's a law of attraction system. It's not some, airy fairy thing. It's actually like I work with high powered people and teach them how to access the power of the law of attraction. But a lot of people at first are like, what?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
crazy.
It's more of like I think because a lot of it gets taught in more of like that woo way, but like you said, it's like more like physics and like a system to it. And when you understand that, if you're less woo woo, it's like easier to take it
Yeah.
and apply it to yourself. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Dr. Amanda. This was fun. I really appreciate you coming here today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.